An address by Viktor Ivanovich Petrik, academic of the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, to the President of Russia.
Многоуважаемый Дмитрий Анатольевич,
Dear Dmitry Anatolievich, I am aware that I appeal to the President of Russia. The excuse for my tough action is the exceptional importance to the state of the issues that I want to report.
о которых я хочу доложить в моем обращении. В этой части моего обращения я хочу рассказать.
In this part of my appeal, I would like to tell you about the history of a unique material called armor optical ceramics, or spinel.
Что такое шпинель и для чего она нужна?
What is spinel and what is it for? Transparent crystal spinel is a unique, rare gem. For example, a 398-carat spinel is at the top of Catherine II's large imperial crown.
Весом в 398 карат. А знаменитый рубин Тимура.
Also, the famous Timur ruby in the British crown appeared to be polished red spinel.
Оказался шпинель. Это уникальной красоты.
This is a gemstone of unique beauty.
Кроме красоты, шпинель обладает.
It is transparent in the ultraviolet, visible, and infrared ranges, and it doesn't change its physical properties even when heated to almost 1000 degrees.
И сохраняет эти высочайшие физические характеристики при нагреве почти до 1000 градусов. Собственно, именно эти уникальные свойства, то есть твердость.
As a measure of fact, precisely these unique properties, hardness, transparency, and heat resistance, have attracted the attention of researchers to this
В какой
material.
области могут быть востребованы материалы с такими характеристиками?
In what areas can material with such properties be demanded?
Прежде всего,
Armored optical materials are in demand primarily for thermal-loaded constructive elements of military equipment,
например, в качестве иллюминаторов космических,
such as windows of spacecraft, aircraft, underwater craft of various classes, and armored windows for helicopters.
для вертолетов. Но прежде всего в таких материалах нуждается.
But above all, rocket science is in need of these materials.
В 1961
In 1961, Gary, the well-known researcher of optical materials, wrote in his report to the US Army,
материалов Гатти писал: после анализа различных кандидатов
after analysis of various candidates, polycrystalline and single crystal materials, the conclusion was made that spinel practically meets all the requirements for making transparent armor, such as transparency, resistance to striking objects, durability, the values of the modulus of elasticity, and shift.
величину модулей упругости и сдвига. Другие многочисленные исследователи шпинели
Many other scientists also demonstrated in their research that spinel, due to its physical and optical properties, is the best candidate among all other known materials for making transparent armored windows and fairings in optical electronic guidance systems of missiles and aircraft.
для окон и обтекателей в оптоэлектронных будущих системах наведения ракет и самолетов. К разработкам технологий
The United States and the Soviet Union started the development of spinel synthesis practically at the same time in 1961.
случилось в 1961 году. В США синтезом шпинели
Many scientific centers in the USA and in the USSR were engaged in the synthesis of spinel.
известно.
It is known from the sources that the research was suspended several times due to lack of funding. Over $1 billion were spent in the USA.
Миллиарда долларов. В СССР к синтезу шпинелей было привлечено
Over 18 scientific institutions were involved in the synthesis of spinel in the USSR,
государства.
the leading one being the Vavilov State Optical Institute.
Чем закончились эти усилия? Чем закончились эти многолетние
How did these efforts end?
которые проводили
How did these long-term studies, carried out by two of the largest countries in the world, end?
исследования шпинелей?
In the USSR, research of spinel was discontinued in 1988.
Примерно в это же
In the
время
USA,
были
research of spinel was discontinued around the same time as well.
на данный период было признано, что шпинель прозрачную в
It is recognized at this point that spinel transparent in the ultraviolet, visible, and infrared ranges has not been synthesized yet.
Почему я делаю этот акцент?
Why do I emphasize transparent in ultraviolet, visible, and infrared ranges?
Дело в том, что
The fact is that for nearly 30 years, researchers worked with the same raw materials.
исследователи работали с одними и теми
They were the salts of aluminum sulfate and magnesium.
соли сульфата
And I
алюминия.
emphasize precisely this.
Я делаю
They worked
акцент
with these
в данном
materials,
случае.
the salts of aluminum sulfate and magnesium,
Работали
powders.
с сульфатами алюминия и магния, порошки. И дальше отрабатывались
Further on, the modes and technologies were perfected,
вводились
and various
присадки
additives were introduced in order to obtain this transparent ceramic. They've got it. They obtained a red-brown spectrum. It was called K57 in the USSR.
Стёк. В СССР он назывался К-57. Этот материал обладал прозрачностью
That material was transparent only in the mid-infrared range. The application for it wasn't found either in America or in Russia because the transparency in this range has a so-called fluomagnesium ceramic, which was used previously and is used up to date for windows in surface-to-air missiles.
и применяется до настоящего времени в зенитно-ракетных комплексах в качестве окон. Какими же недостатками обладает эта керамика?
What are the disadvantages of these ceramics?
Дело в том, что кроме низких прочностных характеристик,
The fact is that it has low temperature properties.
низкотемпературная.
Its transmittance significantly decreases after heating up to 200 degrees.
Коэффициент пропускания.
But that's not the main thing. The most important thing is that the fluomagnesium ceramics aren't transparent only in the infrared range.
Керамика прозрачна.
Remember that we wanted to obtain ceramics which are transparent in ultraviolet, visible, and infrared
Что
ranges.
мы хотели получить
Why do we need such a wide range?
в ультрафиолетовом,
Here's why.
видимом и инфракрасном диапазоне. Зачем такая широта спектра? А вот зачем.
Missiles are equipped with infrared homing heads. Infrared homing uses the emission from a target of electromagnetic radiation in the infrared part of the spectrum to track and follow it. For defense purposes, airplanes and helicopters are equipped with devices for emission of the false thermal
В
targets.
1990 году я создал первый
In 1990, I opened the first private lab in Russia,
и приступил
where I started synthesizing noble spinel along with my other projects.
к благородной шпинели. Но моя работа была направлена на синтез
I focused on the synthesis of spinel for jewelry purposes, for the jewelry industry.
ювелирных целей, для ювелирной промышленности. В 1992 году в моих
In
лабораториях
1992,
была синтезирована
gemstone spinel was synthesized in my lab, and I obtained a patent for it.
у нее патент на эту работу. В этом же году я внедрил одну из своих технологий.
In the same year, I introduced one of my technologies in Idar Oberstein. I became acquainted there with the work of Dr. Ackermann. The world was fascinated with so-called laser scalpel at this time.
Лазерными скальпелями. У этой замечательной, по сути, технологии
But its remarkable technology has a single point of failure.
скальпель из сапфира
Sapphire scalpel holds low voltage, requires high-precision optical orientation, and often breaks during surgery.
высокой точности и часто разрушается во время операции. Доктор Акерман показал в своем
Dr. Ackermann showed in his patent that spinel scalpels can maintain the voltage 100 times better than sapphire.
превосходящий сапфир. Но этот патент и эта работа
But unfortunately, his patent and the project weren't implemented due to the extremely high cost of spinel.
гигантских денег. И где же набрать таких скальпелей? Однако я подумал, коль мне удалось синтезировать
However,
ювелирную шпинель,
I thought that if I managed to synthesize gemstone-colored spinel, I could synthesize polycrystalline spinel intended for laser scalpels and laser surgery.
шпинель, предназначенную для лазерных скальпелей, для лазерной хирургии. В процессе своей работы
In the course of this work, I continuously sent samples to the Israeli Institute of Ceramics.
Вот у меня такая папочка.
A certain Mr. Weiner was leading me in that work.
Некий господин Вильнер вел меня И вот здесь огромное количество этих отчетов
I kept a folder since then. Here it is.
времени.
There are a lot of reports in this folder.
Они вот стали такие
They become almost
полупрозрачные.
transparent because of time,
Везде видны
but we can see the characteristics that were sent to us in all of them. And each time, I've corrected the additives and the process connected with pressure and temperature based on the obtained results.
Я корректировал, естественно, и присадки, и все процессы, которые связаны с временем, с давлением, с температурой. Почему в израильский институт?
Why did I choose the Israeli Institute?
Я не смог.
Because I couldn't find any analytical centers in Russia which would have sufficient equipment and qualified and experienced people able to conduct this research.
Обладавшимся опытом, людьми, чтобы можно было проводить эти исследования. Что же я посылал в Израиль?
What did I send to Israel and what did it look like?
Значит, это вот такие запрессовки,
There were such press-fit installations,
различные, вот, например,
different
можно
ones.
увидеть
Here's an example.
края
You can see that the edges are colored, but the center is already transparent.
Ну, не сумел убрать.
And this one is completely transparent spinel.
Так вот,
We can see that it is transparent in the visible range.
или вот
This kind of press-fit installations I'd sent to Israel.
совершенно прозрачная шпинель, мы хорошо видим, что она прозрачная в видимом диапазоне.
And finally they sent me back a full spectrum. They showed me.
В Израиль, и, наконец, они прислали мне полностью спектр, показав, вот, например, вот она
Here, for example, it's entirely transparent but cloudy in one corner.
прозрачная, вернее, вся.
It means that there was not enough time for crystallization
Значит,
or
вот
temperature.
хватило здесь времени для кристаллизации или температуры, то есть какого-то параметра для полной кристаллизации. И вот, наконец, когда керамика была создана, а этот факт...
After the ceramic was finally created and this fact was published, I was visited by the Israeli General Yaakov and the US General James Panama.
Генерал Яаков и генерал Парам. Один из Израиля, другой из США. Мне было предложено...
They asked me to sell them this development. I didn't sell it. Why?
Что это было?
Probably I was dreaming of recognition here.
Моменты декомпенсации мечтал о признании здесь. В России первые исследования
The first study of spinel obtained in my lab in Russia was held in Vavilov State
в
Institute.
Всесоюзном государственном институте имени Вавилова. То есть в том институте, который был...
It was the leading institute in the USSR in this field.
Вот метрологический
Here is a certificate issued by the S.I. Vavilov All Russia Scientific Center and signed by Shilov, the detective director, and by Bartkevich, the head of the division.
Шилова и начальника подразделения Барткевича. Следующее исследование проведено...
The following study was conducted in the Mendeleev All-Russian Institute for Metrology. It's a committee of the Russian Federation for Standardization, Metrology, and Certification. The certificate and passports for the spinel was issued, confirming its optical and mechanical properties.
И механические свойства. На основании данных исследований генеральный директор
Based on these studies, Mr. Puchkov, the general director of the All Russia Scientific Center, has issued the following conclusion. The development of ceramics with similar properties has been conducted by many scientific centers in the Soviet Union since 1974. The technology of the synthesis of magnesium alloys by salt gel technology, developed by Victor Petrik, is a great scientific achievement. The next conclusion was issued by Gushin, honored design engineer or constructor of the Russian Federation and academician of RAS and the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, the head and chief designer of the Bureau of Mechanical Engineering of Kolomna. He is a developer of anti-aircraft homing missiles, including Strela and the Needle. Here is Gushin's conclusion. Our experts examined the characteristics of the material and inspected the samples. This material certainly possesses high technical characteristics. Nowadays, with the creation of multispectral products for specific purposes, this material may find wide application for the manufacture of fairings working in difficult conditions.
Он же и был
Gushin
главным
was the main
заказчиком
customer
на
for the
разработку
development of
шпинелей
Spinel in Russia.
в России.
A portable complex designed primarily for air defense, infantry, and tank battalions. The main targets are low-flying aircraft and helicopters. Complex Strelad 2, developed in Kolomno Engineering Design Bureau.
Разработали в Коломенском КБ машиностроения.
Следующее заключение выдал
The following conclusion was issued by Yefremov, the well-known designer of anti-aircraft missile complexes and systems, winner of the State Prize, three-time laureate of the Lenin Prize, winner of the award for merits before the fatherland, and academician of RAS. The anti-aircraft missile system OSA. The complex was developed at the Research Institutes of Electromechanics. Chief designer, Veniamin Yefremov. The leading developer of the Torah, Electromechanical Research Institute. Chief designer, Veniamin Yefremov. C-300. This complex for air defense of land forces was developed in the Electromechanical Research Institute. The chief designer, Veniamin Yefremov.
Заключение было направлено в Москву, Кремль.
The conclusion was sent to the Secret Security Service of the President in the Kremlin,
В этом
Moscow.
заключении сказано:
Here is the conclusion.
ознакомление с переданными нам
Getting the transmitted documents and pre-testing the sample gives us a reason to believe that the developed optical ceramic possesses unique properties, and its development is a scientific achievement.
А ее создание является научным достижением. Особый интерес представляет
The ability to manufacture homing head antennas from this material is of particular interest,
головок самонаведения, так как керамика имеет
because the ceramics have all the necessary mechanical properties and transparency, which ensures the functioning of heads of homing at radio and optical wavelengths simultaneously.
и оптических диапазонах длин волн. В силу изложенного
We believe
считаем,
that further work with
что
ceramics can ensure its wide
проведение
application in the field of defense
керамики
technology.
может обеспечить ее широкое применение в области оборонной техники. Должен сказать, что в тот день, когда меня
I should mention that Yefremov invited me to his office on his birthday.
было 70 лет.
The great designer had turned 70. There were people in his office sitting around a table covered in appetizers. He asked me to sit down and gave instructions to his staff to conduct optical and strength measurements of the samples which I had brought with me. The results were ready after about half an hour. He read the conclusion, stood up, and hugged me very tightly and said, "We have been waiting 20 years for this event." It is hard to believe, but I saw the tears in his eyes. I am sure that many of the NTA employees still remember that day.
Следующее обращение я получил от председателя
I've got the following message from Mr. Brendikov,
политики,
the chairman of the Committee on Military Technical Policy of the Ministry of Defense.
всеми специалистами отмечаются высокие
All the
технологии,
experts noted a high level of technological advancements, and information on similar achievements abroad are not currently available. Some organizations are interested in such optical armor ceramics for manufacturing high-strength bearings. And finally, I was summoned by the chief of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, Colonel General Sidnov. There was a group of experts on gamma-ray lasers, led by Colonel Bugrov in his office.
Я сделал доклад на эту тему. Второй темой обсуждения
I gave a report on this topic. The second topic of discussion was transparent ceramics, Spinel. Under Sidnov's direction, a working committee was created, led by the chief of the 14th Division, Major General Tuzhikov. Sidnov instructed to create another committee, which was led by an RAS representative.
Был у них такой отдел прикладных наук, председатель этого отдела, и обе компании работали со мной в городе Самара.
I worked with both committees in St. Petersburg for 2 weeks. Their conclusions were reported to Sidnov.
Были, естественно, доложены Сиднову. В результате Сиднов обратился
As a result, Sidnov sent an application to Andrei Afanasievich Kokoshin, who served as Minister of Defense at that time, and to Chernomyrdin, with a proposal to give them my developments on Spinel and on gamma-ray lasers.
передать мои разработки в области шпинели, в том числе и все мои наработки в области
The importance of this was confirmed by the request of the academician and great scholar Trutnev, chairman of the State Technical Commission under the President of the Russian Federation.
РФ, крупнейшим ученым Российской Федерации, академиком Трутневым, дискутировать.
It made me extraordinarily happy to be able to have a discussion with him on such a complex topic in the field of physical phenomena as coherent radiation and receive his blessing and support.
Конечно, необыкновенным счастьем. Что же получается? Получается, что на протяжении почти 30
So what do we get?
две сверхдержавы
Essentially,
пытались
over the course of almost 30 years, two superpowers tried to solve a certain scientific problem, spent millions of dollars on research, came to the conclusion that the problem lacks a technical solution, at least at that stage, and yet in a private laboratory, a certain Victor Petrik created this material.
Петрик создал этот материал. Возможно ли такое? Хотя бы теоретически.
Is that even theoretically possible?
И все же мы исходим.
But still we are coming from unsurmountable facts. That armored optical ceramic has been created, that it exists, and this cannot be questioned in any way.
И это не подлежит никакому сомнению. Ее подтвердили крупнейшие специалисты.
This has been declared by the biggest specialists in our country. Moreover, it's right here in front of us, in the form of real fairings. Here they are, genuinely lying here in front of us, ready-made products, fairings, that is.
Готовые изделия, то есть обтекатели, прозрачные, в ультрафиолетовом виде.
Transparent in the ultraviolet, visible even in the infrared spectrum.
Специально слегка.
Here we have some that are slightly decorative on purpose.
Называем
We
это
call this jewel spinel.
ювелирной шпинели. А вот это результат исследований.
And this is the result of studies that have been done in our time, and one would think once and for all.
Проведены снова, казалось бы, окончательно и уже навсегда. Где проведены эти исследования?
Where were these studies carried out?
Обороны.
By order of the Minister of Defense, with whom I met in person.
Казалось бы, где
One would think, where is the minister and where am I?
он дал указания.
He gave directions and they were accepted.
Путилин
A meeting with scientists was arranged in Mikhailov's office.
в кабинете
That was the
Михайлова
first time I met
начал
Bagdasarov.
с учеными. Там впервые я познакомился с Багдасаровым. Я пользуюсь разработанным им
I
замечательным
employ absolutely wonderful equipment that he developed, and I submitted the fairings for study in the Shubnikov Institute. These are the fractures.
я передал
They were tested on their strength
для
characteristics.
проведения исследований в Институте Шубникова. Вот эти разломы, это они испытывали на прочностные характеристики.
But before they could give that conclusion, Bagdasarov came here and brought with him Kobzyrev, a leading chemical specialist.
Специалиста-химика Кобзареву. И они здесь находились 3 дня.
They were here for 3
В
days.
присутствии я
In their presence, I synthesized the original powders for spinel.
для шпинели. Они побывали со мной в моих цехах.
They were with me in my workshops.
Они осмотрели
They
оборудование.
inspected the equipment.
То самое оборудование, которое я заказал.
The very same equipment that I had ordered in the city of Armavir.
Те самые
The same
веса,
presses.
то самое
Equipment
оборудование,
without equal.
которое
Made in the city of Rzhov at the Elektromechanika military factory.
создано в городе Ржев, военный завод электромеханика, который по моим эскизам
Built to my specifications by Grits, the head constructor of that factory.
Гриц. Это специальное оборудование для
This is special equipment for the manufacture of superfine scandium, which in my case is an additive to spinel.
к шпинели.
Виктор Иванович Петрик
Viktor Ivanovich Petrik is paving new roads in the field of creating new materials. I have to hand it to Viktor Ivanovich that he's very open to discussion. He has participated actively in all our projects. We got everything we wanted. Among his major achievements is Spinel, which has a melting point of 2,135 degrees. That's a very high temperature and a very aggressive environment. Viktor Ivanovich demonstrated that this problem can be solved by created polycrystals at lower temperatures, at temperatures of up to 1,200 degrees. Between 900 and 1,200 degrees, that's the interval in which you can get these materials. And now about his other work, which I find very interesting, his work with silicon. I believe that the energy problem with silicon will be solved with the aid of Viktor Ivanovich Petrik's work. There's no doubt that his work is a breakthrough. It paves new roads in science. It should definitely be given to Viktor Ivanovich because he is moving ahead of the entire planet and ahead of everyone. And the government should support his work. This is a whole new page in the history of materials and components science. I went along with Khachatur Sakhovich with great pleasure because I was very keen on finally finding out and understanding how to create and apply nanotechnology. I was genuinely astounded by what I saw. Because the results that I saw and, most importantly, the simplicity of the technology with which I became acquainted, as a professional chemist, I was able to assess this. That is, can it really exist or not? I was shocked. For example, that breakthrough in the field of creating polycrystal spinel is simply a genuine breakthrough. In America, as far as we know, they've been struggling with this problem and have yet to solve it. So what happened then? How was it that I synthesized spinel? This is what happened. Traditional spinel was synthesized from sulfates of aluminum and magnesium. Without paying attention to the grit, they made fine-grained powder measurable in microns. Why? And here we come to the most important thing I'll say. The fact of the matter is that in 1987 in Siberia, a well-known part of my biography, I set up my very own personal and unique laboratories, which had an excellent library. I received books from every corner of the USSR. I busied myself with different things, but one of my more serious activities was the synthesis of various materials. This included work for the jewelry industry, and that was where I first synthesized black opal. We sent a sack of black opals to the city of Idar Oberstein, where they gave us a certificate that stated which Australian location they had come from. That location is extremely well known. That was where the famous Divanshirsky opal was found. It belonged to the family of Prince Divanshir. 100 carats in size. I hold in my hands this masterpiece, which not a single examination in the world will be able to distinguish from the genuine Divanshirsky opal. In order to get the specific changes in color, it can blaze purple, turning into green, Not knowing anything then about nanotechnology, I intuitively or consciously understood that I need to manufacture superfine powders.
О понятии нанотехнологии, интуитивно или осознанно понимал, что мне нужно произвести сверхмелкодисперсные порошки. Здесь я хочу сказать несколько слов.
Here I'd like to say a few words, and this is very important. So what is nanotechnology, which science knew nothing of just 10 years ago? This. Today we know that if you take a particle of 10 to 100 nanometers in size, it has different properties than the same material in that very micron-sized state.
Этот же материал, будучи в микроразмерном состоянии. Другие свойства.
Different properties, a different melting point, different thermal conductivity, different reactivity.
Другие реакционные способности. И вот я с целью получения.
And so I, aiming to create my black opal, produce nano-sized powders via sol gel method.
Порошки наноразмерные. Почему никто никогда ранее
Why had no one ever gotten nano-sized powders?
Потому что, находясь в этой
Because with these dimensions, a particle has a very high reactivity, and they can bind together instantaneously.
мгновенно между собой соединяется. Называется это агломерирует, агрегирует.
This is called agglomeration.
И каким бы мы способом
And no matter what method we use to create particles, whether we used the sol gel solution method or blasting method, the output was always micro-sized particles.
Так как же случилось, что в частной лаборатории
So how was it that a private laboratory was able to create a material that two superpowers had been trying to create over several decades? Apparently something happened, something decisive.
А вот что. Впервые для синтеза
For the first time, in the synthesis of opal and spinel and other materials that I make today, nano-sized powders were used.
наноразмерные порошки. Я растворил исходные металлы.
I dissolved the original metals, magnesium and aluminum, not in sulfuric acid, as had been done before me, but in alcohol.
И получил наноразмер.
And I got nano-sized powders.
Как я получил?
How did I get nano-sized powders?
Дело вот в чем. Это так называемые
Here's the thing.
которые до меня делали.
That so-called sol gel technology that had been done before me and that everyone knew about. I was the first who thought to introduce inhibitors at a certain stage and thereby prevent the particle's growth, to keep it in a nano-sized state.
Рост частицы. Остановив ее в наноразмерном состоянии. Вот и вся тайна.
That's the whole mystery of nanotechnology.
Один замечательный английский ученый сказал мне.
One wonderful English scientist once said, "We did that earlier too, but didn't know that that's what it was called."
Почему?
That's not true.
Никогда раньше
That's good English humor, but it's not true.
в
Never before in engineering had nano-sized materials been created.
материале.
Why? Because no matter how we made that powder, whether we got it from solutions or from blasting method, we always got micro-sized powders.
Или получаем мы его взрывным методом. Мы всегда получали микроразмерные порошки. Поскольку, находясь в наноразмерном
That's because when in a nano-sized state, any particle is very highly active, and they instantly restore their covalent bonds and grow into micro-sized particles.
и разрастаются до микроразмерных частиц. Называется это.
This is called agglomeration.
Неважно как.
No matter what,
А если
they grow.
они не выросли,
And if they didn't grow, then by opening the chamber, they would oxidize immediately.
чаще всего сгорят.
Most often, they would burn down before your eyes.
И вот,
And so,
понимая,
understanding that I needed submicroparticles,
частицы тогда это
that's what that was called then, I introduced inhibitors into the process of powder manufacture via sol gel method from precipitating alcohol solution.
я ввел ингибиторы.
Upon application of heat and pressure, all these inhibitors escape, and then the material buds begin to form,
Улетучиваются,
microcrystals.
а в материале начинают образовываться зародыши, микрокристаллики, которые под соответствующим
which under certain
давлением
pressure become ordered and oriented,
упорядочиваются, ориентируются, и мы получаем
and we get a transparent material which possesses unique properties.
уникальными свойствами. Тот же сапфир, аналогичный по твердости,
For example, sapphire,
в 14
analogous in
раз,
hardness, is 14 times inferior in such characteristic as fracturing to a polycrystalline material.
поликристаллическому материалу. Почему? Трещина возникла,
A fracture appeared and nothing limits it,
а здесь она натекает.
but here it runs into the next tiny crystal and stops.
И вот сегодня в моей монографии
And today, in my monograph entitled Armored Optical Materials, Spinel,
я показал, что из поликристаллического материала,
I demonstrated that from polycrystalline material already known to us, which we grew in Bagdasarov's machinery,
что сегодня именно на основе
that today it is on the foundation of polycrystalline materials that lasers are created.
в частности, именно по моей технологии.
It is through my technology in particular that these materials are made in Japan, and Japan delivers them to America. This is 20 kilowatts, which is within reach of 100 kilowatts. This is the future weapon. With it, you can cut flying missiles, even shells. That's where we need to go.
Вот куда надо идти. В этой книге я
In this book, I also demonstrated the work I did on Spinel,
мою работу, сделанную на шпинели, не только для того, чтобы
and not just to show once more that I created
я
Spinel,
создал шпинели, но и из-за моего особого
but because of my special reverence,
портрета
the portrait of Diodorus,
Иерусалимского
Patriarch of Jerusalem.
патриарха Диодора. Вот портрет патриарха Диодора
This is the portrait of the Patriarch Diodorus, which I made in Spinel. Is the issue of Spinel relevant today? Without a question, yes.
Вот все эти годы, с того момента, когда я не продал в Израиль,
All these years, since the moment in which I didn't sell Spinel to the Institute of Ceramics in Israel,
с этой же темой.
I've been working with this very matter.
И вот в декабре месяце
In December of 2010,
опубликована
a
работа
paper from the Institute of Ceramics in Israel was published,
«Институт керамики»
in which the creation of ceramic spinel from sulfates of aluminum and magnesium with transmission in an infrared region was discussed.
керамики, шпинели из сульфатов алюминия и магния с пропусканием в инфракрасной области, то есть это та шпинель.
That was the same spinel that was once made in the USA.
Что же случилось?
So what happened?
Почему я сегодня,
Why is it that today I am making a presentation to you,
многоуважаемый
dear Dmitry Anatolievich, about the spinel?
шпинели? Дело в том, что я хорошо помню, как я сидел
The
у
thing
министра
is
Родионова,
that I remember well how I sat with Minister Rodionov.
Чикокошина,
He summoned his deputy, Andrei Afanasyevich Koshkin,
программу
and we discussed a program to transfer this technology to the Department of Defense.
Министерства обороны. К большому сожалению, вскоре, буквально через 10 дней,
Unfortunately,
Родионов
a few days later, Rodionov was dismissed, and at a special meeting of Russian academics, the following was
в
stated.
специальном совещании, которое проводил Борис Тимофеевич Литвиненко, российские академики заявили следующее. Это очень плохой документ.
This is a very bad document for them.
Они заявили о том, что
They
вот
stated that
Petrik
this Petrik
утверждает,
claims that his
что
spinel possesses unique strength
обладает
characteristics,
уникальными
including hardness.
прочностными характеристиками,
No,
в том
they
числе и
said.
твердостью.
Worse, they wrote it down.
Хуже они это написали. Нет. Карбид бора
No.
тверже.
Boron carbide is
Это
stronger.
страшно.
That's
Не
frightening.
понять, что это сделали
It's
академики.
inconceivable to think that this was done by academics.
Карбид бора
The thing is that boron carbide is a construction material, but not an optical one.
резцы.
It would make good incisors for a lathe.
для токарного станка.
This has nothing to do with armor materials.
Не имеющего
That was the basis for their criticism.
броневым материалом. Таким образом, они раскритиковали. Я рванул в Думу.
I rushed into the
Я
Duma.
встретился с Селезневым.
I met with Seleznyov,
Ко мне
the chairman of the expert council of the State Duma. Mr. Denisov went to see me.
в Государственной Думе господин Денисов. Он посетил все. Он был у меня
He visited everything.
2 недели.
He was with me for 2 weeks, a doctor of technical sciences. Before that, I think he taught in the Polytechnical Institute.
Заведовал кафедрой.
Without a doubt, a learned person.
Безусловно, грамотный.
We did all that was necessary. He even spoke on television.
Все необходимые. Он и по телевидению выступил.
The Academy of National Security was created as a structure serving the needs of national security. All of our recommendations are received with gratitude and carried out. Granted, not immediately. Things are approved by the Council of National Security, and then with the aid of the Academy, it prepares government regulations. We have an academic by the name of Petrik there. He develops a completely unique label that can't be faked, on the base of the anti-Stokes method. So far, only he has been able to create this anti-Stokes effect, which was deemed strictly theoretical and could not be done by anyone. We did it. And then, we've worked out certain crystalline materials for missile radomes. We spoke with Defense Minister Sergeyev. The problem is literally one of defense security. That is, it's not easy to sell. The French offer, sell it to us. We suffer from not knowing what to do, because on one hand, it wouldn't be bad to sell them. On the other, no one has them. They would immediately gain an advantage over our missiles. Why would we want that? But so far, we can't do it in Russia. There's no money. The ministry shrugs, of course we need this. So we gave them 10 made from nothing, and then what?
И вот не так давно я передал мои материалы.
Not so long ago, I submitted my materials to the Russian Academy of Sciences. I'll tell the story of how this took place in my next address.
В следующем обращении, а сейчас сообщу.
For now, I'll say the following.
Российская
The Russian Academy of Sciences, specifically the Commission on Pseudoscience, gave the following conclusion.
дала следующее заключение. Итак, пункт производства оптической броневой керамики.
The production of optical combat ceramics designed to work in extreme conditions.
Одна из 11 моих.
This is one of 11 topics of mine.
По этому поводу
For this reason, my fellow academics from the Commission on Pseudoscience are a criminal group formed within the Russian Academy of Sciences,
созданной при Российской Академии Наук,
which has a customer who has foreign funding, for which I have an irrefutable base of evidence, and the documents demonstrated the following.
Доказательная база и документы показали следующее. Из сравнительного анализа литературы
From the comparative analyses of published data, we can infer that transparent ceramic magnesium aluminate has inferior performance characteristics than the transparent aluminum oxynitride created by the Sormet Corporation in the USA for use as an armor material.
полученного Sormet Corporation США для использования в качестве броневого материала. Это преступление.
This is a crime. This is a crime that someone without a doubt should answer for, because this is direct diversion and disinformation of the government in a particularly important field.
Дезинформация правительства в особо важной области. Дело в том, что фирма
The
Sormet
thing is that the Somert company does indeed manufacture so-called alon.
действительно производит так называемый алон, который
which in every characteristic is inferior to spinel, inferior to sapphire.
сапфира. Более того,
Moreover, it more or less passes in the infrared region, and it goes blind when warmed to a temperature above 150 degrees.
слепнет после разогрева свыше 150 градусов. И
Here I'm showing you actual documents.
показываю
Here we see the bandwidth of spinel, sapphire, and
Мы
alon.
видим на нем сейчас полосы пропускания шпинели, сапфира и алона. Кроме этого, в любом документе
Besides this, in any document or on the internet, it is demonstrated that along with alon, the Sormet company continues its investigative studies in spinel synthesis.
исследовательские работы по синтезу шпинели. Не так давно закупили 200 тонн.
Not so long ago, they purchased a 200-ton press, which, by the way, is completely unnecessary with my technology.
Шпинель производить
If spinel is manufactured by means of hydraulic press, then we won't get more than 200
то
millimeters.
больше 200
Imagine how large the presses would have to be.
мы и не получим, от какого размера пресса должны быть. А я
Whereas I plan to manufacture spinel reserves of 200 meters
хоть
even.
двухметрового размера. И у меня есть для этого все созданные технологии. Мало того, академики заявили,
Worse still,
что я украл.
those academics declared that I stole this method from the State Optic Institute.
Итак, мы сегодня посмотрели,
And so we today looked at the conclusion given by all the general constructors, the customers for the ceramic.
конструктора, то есть заказчики этой керамики.
И поступили молодцы из ВПК. Петрик передал ВПК.
We were asked to do a spectral optical analysis of the samples from Viktor Petrik.
Исследование этих образцов. Вот. Мы исследовали пропускание.
There were transmission studies.
Петрику удалось
They correspond to spinel.
оптически прозрачный
Petrik was able to
керамик.
get optically transparent ceramic.
Это очень крупное
This
достижение.
is a major
Вот
achievement.
это направление очень
This direction
важно.
is very important.
Его надо
We need to
развивать,
advance it,
развивать,
and so far,
развивать,
Viktor
пока
Petrik alone is advancing it.
все проблемы, которые он поднимает, имеют
All the issues that he raises are of colossal importance for industry, massive importance. I consider him a true worker. He does everything, and everything turns out right. He is either a very talented person or a genius.
Понимаете?
Следует из этого, что они не знали, что
It follows from this that they didn't know that the ceramic was made at the State Optic Institute. None of them knew.
беспрерывно шло
They
сопровождение этой темы.
They constantly followed this topic, but they didn't know that it had been made.
В суде, безусловно,
Our case is in
они
court.
будут осуждены.
They will certainly be convicted of libel.
Но при этом,
But despite this, dear Dmitry Anatolievich,
зная
knowing your
вашу
wonderful thirst for knowledge, I
замечательную
hope that it was of
познавательную
interest to you
потребность,
to hear everything I said.
я надеюсь, что вам было интересно услышать все, что я рассказал. Но я
But I
задаю
ask you
вопрос,
this,
что же мне делать теперь со всем этим?
what am I to do with all of this now?
Спасибо вам.
Thank you.